Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take the most complex operational and strategic frameworks and really try to distill them down to the essential wisdom you need to be successful.
That's the goal.
And today we are putting ourselves right in the driver's seat of, I think, long-term corporate health. We're mapping out the ultimate journey.
It really is a journey.
It's this highly technical, often treacherous, but absolutely critical process of planning and executing a new product portfolio.
Yeah, treacherous is a good word for it. This is a masterclass in organizational discipline. I mean, it's not enough to just rely on these, flashes of genius.
Right.
You need a machine that can sustainably take a raw idea, rigorously test its strategic value, resource it correctly, and then shepherd it all the way through execution.
Until it becomes a continuous, reliable revenue stream.
That's the end game. And our sources today really provide that blueprint. They show how large, established organizations maintain a continuous flow of high-value innovation.
That's exactly right. And, you should think of this as a shortcut to mastering the mechanics behind strategic selection, understanding those crucial decision-making gates, and adopting the execution models that ensure consistency.
Right.
So your mission for this deep dive is to leave here understanding the 4 core steps that govern successful, repeatable product development.
And those 4 steps, they really are the foundation of everything we're going to discuss today. They move so logically from, the widest possible scope right down to the narrowest focus.
So what are they?
First up is idea generation. This is where the funnel is filled, just pure volume.
Okay.
Second, project prioritization. This is where all the filters get applied. The strategic, the financial, the risk-based filters. This is the hard part.
The messy part.
The messy part, yes. Third is road mapping. This establishes the timeline, the vision, and it acknowledges your resource constraints.
So planning it out over time.
Exactly. And then finally, number 4, project execution, which ensures that disciplined, phased delivery, usually via some kind of structured model.
That sequence really is the flow of cash, talent, and time in an organization. But before we get to the really difficult work of prioritization and execution, we have to start where most companies fail, right at the very beginning. The first crucial stage, the one that really determines the quality of your entire pipeline, is ensuring you get maximum possible input before you allow anyone to critique it.
That is the golden rule.
Okay, so let's unpack this with step 1, the idea funnel. It sounds counterintuitive in a corporate environment that's always obsessed with efficiency, right?
Yes.
But the core mandate here is absolute. You must collect as many ideas as you possibly can, and the documentation is unambiguous on this point. It says, in bold, do not filter ideas at this point.
That instruction is just.
Yeah.
It's so vital. Because the biggest enemy of truly disruptive innovation is premature judgment. It's that voice in the room that says, we tried that 10 years ago and it didn't work.
Oh, that's the classic one.
It's the classic innovation killer. The purpose of this initial phase is volume, pure volume. We are trying to fill that wide mouth funnel with just raw potential.
So you're saying if you allow filtering to happen too early, what happens?
Well, let's say a seasoned manager immediately dismisses an idea because of that past failure, or you let the finance department veto a high-cost concept before R&D has even had a chance to look at it.
To see if it's even feasible.
Right. You're ensuring, at that point, that you only ever develop incremental improvements. You lose the bold, the paradigm-shifting concepts. They die on the vine.
So it's essentially a cultural fight against the company's own internal bias.
That's a great way to put it.
We're fighting this natural tendency to seek safety and familiarity. And to combat that bias and ensure you get enough volume, the source material stresses the necessity of sourcing diversity. The idea that you can't just rely on the people who already work for you, especially if they're already comfortable with the current product line. You need what the sources call the outside-in perspective.
Absolutely. Think about it. If your R&D team is your only source of ideas, you are only developing solutions to problems they know they have the tools to solve.
Right. You're working within your existing toolkit.
You're stuck in your own sandbox.
The most valuable market-validated ideas often come from where the rubber meets the road, from the market's actual pain points.
So externally, who are we talking to?
Well, first and foremost, your customers. They know what they desperately need, even if they can't articulate the solution. Then your suppliers. They see efficiency improvements or new component technologies that you might be totally unaware of.
And your channel partners?
Yes, your distributors, your resellers.
They understand how your product stacks up against the competitions on a day-to-day, minute-by-minute basis. They hear the objections. They know why you lose a sale.
You know, that supplier perspective is a really interesting one. I can imagine a supplier might know about, say, an impending material cost increase or technology that's about to become obsolete. Exactly. And that triggers a necessary product replacement idea before the market even demands it. They offer foresight. It's a massive competitive advantage.
So that's the market pull and the competitive context from the outside. But you still need the internal sources.
Of course. The external view provides the what? The internal view provides the how, the capability check, the execution feasibility. Internally, you need that cross-functional representation.
So who's in that room?
You need sales because they understand the buying behaviors, the customer objections. You absolutely need operations and supply. They know the true feasibility, the real cost, the lead times for mass production.
They keep it grounded in reality.
They do. Then you have R&D, who knows what's technologically possible, and crucially, what adjacent technologies are mature enough to be integrated. And then
Product management.
product management itself. They have to act as the central hub, the synthesizer for all this disparate input.
So the goal is pure volume, almost chaotic creativity. But the source material makes a really important distinction here. The process of collection itself cannot be chaotic.
Correct.
While the initial suggestion might come, ad hoc from a conversation in the hallway, our sources are really clear that for long-term organizational success, especially in these huge companies like the ABB organizations they reference,
Right.
a structured capture approach is vastly superior.
Structure is the difference between a one-off hit and a repeatable, sustainable system. It means that ideas must be structured, they must be documented, and they must be known to everyone within the relevant organization.
So not just a suggestion box in the cafeteria.
Please, no.
Yes.
Think of it as a central, universally known repository, a database, a system. Here's a scenario. What happens if a brilliant engineer comes up with a solution, but the project isn't prioritized for 3 years?
If it's lost in an email folder, it's gone forever.
It's gone. If it's in the central repository, tagged, documented, it's still available when that budget bucket finally opens up 3 years down the line.
That common knowledge also prevents duplication of effort and ensures the idea has longevity. Without that structure, you could have 3 different teams solving the exact same problem at the same time.
Or worse, losing 90% of the innovation because it was never properly captured in the first place. This structured storage and visibility, it's what allows the entire organization to treat the idea base as a communal, sustainable asset.
So once that funnel is just overflowing, when you have maximized quantity, then and only then do we transition.
That vast potential energy has to be channeled. We move to the difficult, often political, but absolutely necessary process of selection and prioritization.
We shift from focusing on volume to focusing on strategic quality and, of course, resource allocation.
The hard part begins.
That brings us squarely to part 2, which is step 2, prioritization. The party's over. You've got potentially thousands of brilliant raw ideas, but the company only has the capital and the human resources for maybe 20 viable projects in the next cycle.
If you're lucky.
Right. So prioritization is that strategic filtering process that separates the revolutionary from the merely interesting.
And this filtering isn't, a single on-off switch. It's layered. It's a multi-stage process. And it starts with the most fundamental question of all, high-level strategic alignment.
So we're asking, does this idea actually support the overriding goals of the organization, or is it a distraction, a shiny object?
Exactly. A pet project. To really understand the complexity here, we have to unpack the organizational strata that the source material mentions. What are those key strategic filters? The sources require alignment across EC, DIV, BU, and PEG.
And these aren't just letters, they represent very distinct levels of authority and strategy.
Precisely. Let's just clarify these for everyone, because alignment across these 4 layers
Okay.
is absolutely crucial to preventing internal resource warfare later on.
Okay, let's do it.
EC is the executive committee. This is the highest level, the C-suite. They're setting the multi-year overarching corporate strategy,
The big picture.
the biggest picture. Then you have DIV, which is the division, a major business segment with its own P&L responsibility.
A little more focused.
A little more focused. Then you get down to the BU, the business unit. This is a very focused area, something like HV breakers or industrial sensors. And finally, PG is the product group, the most granular level, often focusing on a specific technology stack.
So an idea has to cascade down and align with all of those. The vision of the CEO, the goals of the division president, the specific market focus of the business unit, and the technical roadmap of the product group.
Yes. And if an idea is, say, strategically perfect for the BU, but it completely contradicts the 5-year plan set by the EC, let's say it's moving into a market the EC explicitly decided to exit, it has failed the alignment filter. End of story.
That level of mandatory alignment prevents those pet projects from consuming valuable R&D resources.
It does, and it ensures efficient deployment of capital, and it prevents internal teams from being pitted against each other later when they're all competing for the same scarce funding.
Okay, so that's the internal alignment. But beyond that, we have to rigorously look outward. The next filter is industry and market-driving forces and trends.
Right. If your strategic filter says a market is shrinking or a technology is reaching obsolescence, even the best aligned idea might just be a dead end.
So you have to ask, does this idea address genuine future-proof trends? Things like decarbonization, digitalization, automation.
Or is it just a better version of yesterday's technology? Then, drilling down even further, the filter has to check for alignment with targeted segment needs.
This is so important. It's not enough that the market in general is growing. Does this idea serve the specific customer segments your BU has chosen to prioritize and win?
Exactly. If you sell primarily to large utility companies, an idea that's perfectly geared towards residential consumers might be a strategic failure for you, regardless of its technical brilliance. It doesn't fit.
And finally, even before the project is formally approved, we start integrating the hard planning inputs. This is where you demand documentation.
Yes. This is where the idea has to prove it's more than just a concept. You need things like the business case, the preliminary financials that show a projected return.
You need the Market Requirement Specification,
Yep.
MRS, which outlines the detailed technical and functional needs.
And you need preliminary project plans. If an idea can't generate these supporting documents, it simply isn't mature enough for the pipeline. It goes back for more work.
But here's the challenge, right? How do we know where the holes in our portfolio are before the ideas even come in? We've filtered the ideas against strategy, but we also need to make sure the portfolio itself is complete.
That is the domain of portfolio gap analysis. We need inputs that actively show us what products, what features, or what market segments are currently neglected or underperforming.
Right, if you're flying blind, you don't know what you should be prioritizing. And the tools here are often pretty pragmatic. The source suggests using profit and loss statements to cover weak areas.
That's a great starting point. If you see a product line that is consistently generating a low margin, you know you need innovation. You either have to radically reduce its cost or you have to replace it entirely with a higher value offering. It's a clear signal for action.
Or the sources mention using more visual tools, like deploying a heat map to visually fill the gaps.
I love heat maps for this. Imagine a grid where one axis is your key market segments, say small industrial, large utility, residential, and the other axis is your product capabilities or features.
Okay.
If large blocks of that grid are cold, meaning you have no product or capability serving that intersection, the prioritization process should be weighted to favor ideas that specifically target those cold spots.
So it's a deliberate intervention to ensure the portfolio is comprehensive and competitive across all the fronts you've chosen to fight on.
Precisely. It's proactive, not reactive.
That makes perfect sense. Now, speaking of comprehensiveness and customer needs, I want to do a deep dive into one of the most critical and sort of quantified selection processes mentioned in the sources, the voice of the customer VUCI method.
Yes. This isn't just about, asking customers what they want. It's a very structured methodology for turning subjective desire into hard, statistical prioritization data.
And why is that so important?
Well, this method is designed to avoid the classic traps. The trap of developing a feature that only one very loud, very important customer wants.
Right, the squeaky wheel.
The squeaky wheel. Or worse, the trap of building features the R&D team thinks are cool, but that the market will not pay a single extra dollar for. The VUCI process is brilliantly detailed. It starts with deep, qualitative interviews with key customers to identify their unmet needs.
So these are the discovery conversations, open-ended.
Very open-ended. Then, those raw needs are analyzed, and a selection of the most important needs is made. You can't test everything. You have to filter the desires down to the critical, say, 20 or 30 needs that represent the greatest market opportunity.
Okay, and now comes the really clever part, the part that makes this quantifiable.
This is it. Those selected needs are printed individually on a card. By turning a need into a physical, discrete artifact, you isolate the decision point for the customer. You are literally creating a professional deck of cards, where each card represents a potential feature or a solution to a problem.
And crucially, that deck of cards, which summarizes the needs from all those key interviews, is then copied and distributed to the entire sales team.
This is a huge step. The sales team is now transformed. They're not just taking orders anymore. They become the primary data collection engine for your strategic prioritization.
So sales takes those decks of cards out to the wider customer base.
That's right. And the customer is now actively involved in your prioritization phase. They are asked to prioritize the cards or the needs. You might give them 100 points to distribute or force them to rank their top 5.
That forced choice is critical.
It's everything, because it tells you what they're willing to trade off for. Anyone will say they want every feature if they're all free. The forced choice reveals true value.
And this data can't just be anecdotal. It can't be, oh, Bob at Acme Corp really liked this one.
No, absolutely not. The prioritization feedback is immediately stored in a central database. This requirement screams scalability. It has to be a system.
So the final step is the most valuable one.
It is. You compile the statistics from many customers' prioritization of the cards. This statistical aggregation gives you a clear, quantitative, defensible view of the features and needs the market collectively views as most important.
And that eliminates the arguments based on one high-profile customer's demand.
It replaces opinion with robust data about what your target segment is collectively willing to prioritize and ultimately pay for.
That VOCI process ensures alignment with segment needs, and it provides such a clear direction. But even after all that rigorous strategic and customer filtering, we still face a huge organization-killing internal risk, which brings us to Part B of prioritization.
Yes, the homogeneity problem.
Tell us about that.
This is the risk that despite all your best efforts, your funnel is still highly biased. If you only prioritize ideas based on, say, immediate ROI and safety, you'll find that all your selected projects start to cluster in very safe areas.
Things like product maintenance, minor feature updates, or cost reduction projects.
Exactly. And look, those projects are absolutely necessary. You need to keep your current products cost competitive and functional.
But they completely fail to address the complete set of needs required for long-term survival.
Right. Specifically, the need for disruptive innovation and platform renewal. If all you ever do is maintenance, you will eventually lose your market leadership. It's a slow death.
So we need a mechanism, a kind of structural intervention, to force a more multidimensional portfolio.
We do. And this is where we introduce the highly influential model developed by Dr. Robert Cooper, known universally in this field as the bucket list.
The bucket list, it sounds simple.
The concept is simple, but its power is profound. It's the ultimate organizational chess move to counteract that corporate inertia.
So what's the fundamental mechanism?
The business unit, or the executive leadership, allocates the complete R&D budget into several distinct parts or buckets, and this allocation is determined before any specific project is placed into them.
So you set the budget for the categories first.
You set the budget for the categories first. By doing that, you create strategic guardrails. You are forcing investment into certain categories, regardless of whether there are currently safe projects available in that category. The source material gives some great examples of the strategic intent here.
Right. For instance, a BU might decide strategically that they need to grow heavily in emerging markets. So they might allocate a significant portion, say 40% of the R&D budget, to the adaptation to local market bucket.
And by doing that, they are ensuring the resources are there to localize products quickly and specifically for those markets. It's a strategic declaration.
Or, recognizing the need to stay technologically ahead, they might allocate 20% to a bucket called New Platform.
And that is inherently the highest risk category. It can take years to pay off, but it is absolutely essential for the future. Without that dedicated 20% bucket, internal pressure would almost certainly push that funding towards safer short-term maintenance projects every single time.
So the mechanism forces that multi-dimensional structure. Once the buckets are budgeted, you take your pre-selected filtered ideas, the ones that pass the strategic alignment and VOC tests,
and you place them into the appropriate buckets based on their type. A localization project goes in the adaptation bucket. A brand new architecture goes in the new platform bucket.
And this is where the final and probably most agonizing prioritization happens.
It is. Because you might have 10 brilliant adaptation to local market ideas, but you only have 40% of the budget. The resources are now limited within each bucket. You can't do them all.
So you have to prioritize the ideas within that bucket and draw a clear line. You decide which projects run immediately and which ones get put on hold until the next cycle.
This step ensures the final portfolio perfectly aligns with the BU or corporate strategy because the allocation itself was dictated by that strategy. It's an intentional prioritization of categories of investment, not just individual projects based on a single financial return metric.
Okay, but once projects are competing for those limited resources within a single bucket, say, you have 3 projects competing in the new platform bucket, how do you decide then?
Now the game shifts back to strict quantitative financial metrics. This is the Chief Financial Officer's final layer of review.
To help prioritize which project makes the cut inside that financially constrained bucket, the source material specifies using established financial tools. We are talking about things like net present value, NPV.
Right, NPV, which measures the profitability of the project over its entire expected lifespan, and it critically factors in the time value of money. A dollar today is worth more than a dollar in 5 years.
We also look at the internal rate of return, IRR.
IRR is the annualized rate of return on the investment. It tells us how resilient the project is to changing costs of capital. And of course, the simple and universally understood payback time.
How quickly do we get our initial investment back?
Exactly.
Oh, wait, isn't there an inherent conflict here? A project with a short payback time sounds really safe and attractive, but it might have a low overall NPV because its revenue window is small. Conversely, a big platform project might have a massive NTV over 10 years, but a really uncomfortably long payback time of, say, 5 years. How does an organization handle that tension?
That's a brilliant question, because that tension is exactly why this financial rigor is so necessary. The organization has to choose which metric dominates based on its current financial health and strategic goals.
So it's not one size fits all.
Not at all. If cash flow is critical right now, payback time might rule the day for your short-term projects. But for that new platform bucket, the BU might mandate the use of NPV, and there's a good reason why. Using a consistent, sophisticated long-term tool like NPV prevents teams from gaming the system. It stops them from constantly pushing short-term, low-value projects that only offer a quick payback. The mandate from the business unit to use a specific tool ensures consistency and forces long-term thinking where it is strategically necessary.
That structural mandate makes sense, but even if the financials look solid, we have to introduce the final critical element we haven't fully addressed yet, risk management.
Yes.
If we only chase the highest NTV, we might inadvertently select projects that are technologically unstable or based on completely untested markets.
Absolutely. The organization needs to understand where it sits on the risk curve. And the source material provides a highly effective visualization tool for this, the risk matrix example, referencing products like HV breakers.
And this matrix plots every potential project based on 2 critical axes.
That's right. On one axis, you have market risk. This reflects the uncertainty of customer adoption, sales channels, competitive response. This often covers those distinct investment buckets we just discussed.
And on the other axis?
On the other axis, you plot technical risk. This is all about the feasibility of the technology itself. Can R&D actually deliver the required performance? Is the supply chain stable and ready? Plotting your entire product portfolio this way immediately highlights where you are overexposed or, just as dangerously, where you're being too safe.
And this leads us to what I think is the most important strategic takeaway from this entire prioritization section, what you call the competitiveness dilemma. The risk matrix immediately visualizes the risk of standing still.
It does. If that matrix shows that 95% of our investment is in the low-risk, low-reward quadrant, meaning we're only focusing on product improvement or maintenance, we are setting ourselves up for future failure.
Because you lose competitiveness over time.
Inevitably. Product maintenance is crucial, yes, but it does not allow you to leapfrog the competition when a new technology emerges. You just get incrementally better at doing the same old thing.
So the mandate is not to eliminate risk.
No. The mandate is to take calculated risk. Risk that is understood, that is budgeted for via the bucket list, and that is managed with clear contingencies. This means taking on projects that achieve large, sometimes disruptive innovations, even if they come with higher technical or market risk. If you are not taking calculated risk, you are guaranteed to fall behind.
And the matrix also helps you avoid the really bad projects.
Yes. The other purpose of the risk-reward matrix is to systematically identify and filter out the truly destructive projects, those with high risk and low projected value. These are the projects where the technology is unstable and the market return is minimal. The matrix forces the organization to kill those projects immediately, freeing up resources for the smart, calculated risks.
It's really fascinating how all these models intersect and build on each other. The sources remind us that this balancing act is foundational. It connects back to prior strategic models like the Ansoff matrix.
Right, balancing product and market growth.
And the GE matrix, the directional policy matrix, which inherently factored in risk relative to growth opportunities.
The ultimate goal of Step 2, prioritization, is the synthesis of all these layers. You have to balance risk tolerance while simultaneously optimizing revenue and profitability. The end goal is to ensure that you maintain a continuous, healthy stream of new products that keep the short-term cash flowing while funding the long-term, calculated bets on the future.
Okay, so once we have our strategically selected, budget-allocated, and risk-vetted list of projects, the approved lineup, we move to the operational reality of execution. And that starts with Step 3, road mapping.
That's right.
This is where the approved projects from the bucket list transform from just a prioritized list into a cohesive, scheduled timeline.
We're moving from the what to the when.
Yeah.
And it's a critical step. Essentially, we are planning out the next 2 to 5 years, taking all those winning projects and spreading them out over time. And this step acknowledges a fundamental truth of any large organization.
You don't have unlimited resources.
You don't have unlimited resources. The primary purpose of this temporal scattering is resource utilization, or what's often called resource leveling. The source notes that you simply don't have the staff, the specialized engineers, the product managers, the manufacturing capacity to execute all the approved projects in the first year.
So the roadmap forces a pragmatic, realistic assessment of those resource constraints.
It does. It prevents your key talent from being overloaded and burned out across 5 critical projects simultaneously.
And this is where the organization's current financial pulse directly influences the priority on that roadmap.
It has to. The roadmap must be flexible and responsive to the company's health.
For example, the source says if the cash flow is currently tight, the organization really has no choice. It has to push those big, disruptive platform projects further out on the timeline.
Absolutely. The roadmap must prioritize short-term cash-generating projects. Projects that launch quickly, require minimal R&D, and deliver revenue within the next 12 months to stabilize the company's financials. It's about survival first.
But conversely, if the financial situation is good, but the competition demands the next generation of products.
Right. If a competitor is about to launch a disruptive feature,
then the starting point for your planning has to prioritize those major platform or highly competitive innovation projects, even if they tie up substantial resources for 3 or 4 years before providing a single dollar of return.
the roadmap becomes a mirror. It reflects the organization's strategic response to both internal financial realities and external competitive pressures.
And once that roadmap is finished, and crucially agreed upon with all the major stakeholders, R&D, sales, operations, finance, it becomes maybe the single most important communication tool in the entire product organization.
I would agree with that, especially for the sales organization. Sales needs to know exactly what they will be selling next year and the year after and the year after that.
It allows them to proactively manage key customer expectations.
And prepare training materials and align their market entry strategies long before the product is physically ready. It aligns the entire forward-facing side of the business against a single, shared, agreed-upon future. No surprises.
That systematic planning brings us to the final step. Step 4, project execution. We have the idea, it's been filtered and budgeted, and we know when it starts and ends on the roadmap. Now, how do we actually build it with discipline and ensure it succeeds?
Our sources are very clear on this. The GATE model is the preferred execution model, and they reference it specifically as the structured method used by large industrial entities.
So what is the GATE model, really?
The GATE model is essential because it institutionalizes rigor. It provides a highly structured, phased approach to project execution, ensuring that critical checkpoints, the gates, are met, and that mandatory deliverables are complete before the project is allowed to consume the next big batch of investment.
It's all about control and reducing risk.
Control and de-risking, exactly. And for product management, the requirement here is nuanced. They need to understand not just the steps in the model, but specifically when to participate and what role they have to play, because they are the continuous voice of the market throughout what is often a very long development cycle.
So let's walk through that key sequence, because the rigor of these gates really dictates the entire tempo of development. It starts, after the idea is approved and on the roadmap, at Gate 0, Start Project.
That's the official takeoff. By Gate 0, the project is officially launched. It must have already demonstrated that it is aligned with strategy. It's passed all those comprehensive strategic filters we talked about.
And the initial high-level opportunity statement must be completed and approved.
Correct. This is basically the green light to fund the initial conceptual phase. You're allowed to spend a little bit of money to figure out if this thing is real.
Okay, so after that initial work, the next major, highly scrutinized checkpoint is Gate 2, target release.
Gate 2 is a massive milestone. This is the crucial transition point where R&D really takes the reins for the long technical development haul. And the deliverables here are huge. The finalized business case must be completed, often including updated financials based on preliminary R&D cost estimates.
Also required is the formal handover to R&D.
Yes, that signals that the conceptual work is done and the technical execution can begin. And perhaps most importantly, the market requirement specification, MRS, that detailed, non-ambiguous document outlining every single technical and functional need, must be finalized and signed off by both R&D and product management.
That document becomes the project's constitution.
It is the constitution. It's what you build to. Passing Gate 2 means R&D begins the core engineering work, but this is often the longest, most resource-intensive, and riskiest part of the entire process. This is the intense period between Gate 2 and Gate 5, release for sales.
And this can stretch for years for a major platform.
Years. And this is where the tension explodes. R&D wants to perfect the technology, which leads to scope creep. Product management is battling changing market dynamics, and finance needs cost certainty.
So what is product management's key role during this long phase?
During this phase, product management has a mandate for continuous monitoring and updating of the business case. As costs change, supplier contracts shift, or the competitive landscape evolves, the financial projections have to be revised and constantly justified to management. You have to keep proving the project is worth finishing.
And beyond the financials.
Well, this long period is packed with operational necessity. We're talking about running beta tests with key customers, ensuring all the regulatory and compliance documentation is complete, and achieving manufacturing readiness. Product management is responsible for driving the planning and execution of the entire market introduction and product launch strategy during this time, well before the product is physically ready to ship.
So if the MRS is the blueprint, the period between G2 and G5 is the actual construction phase, and it's fraught with scope creep and financial pressure.
It is. Gate 5, the release for sales, signals that the product is fully developed, manufactured, inventoried, and ready to ship or be widely marketed. And following that, we move toward closing the loop and assessing success.
Gate 6, close project.
This marks the formal end of the development budget and the conclusion of the immediate execution cycle. The product is launched, but the process doesn't stop there.
The sequence continues with Gate 7, business retrospective. This sounds like a crucial accountability checkpoint.
It's maybe the most important for learning. This is where the actual revenue, costs, and market acceptance are compared rigorously against the original business case and MRS that were completed way back at Gate 2. Did we meet our targets? Why or why not?
You have to be honest in that meeting.
Brutally honest. And critically, even after Gate 6, the product management organization has to continue to monitor and manage the product in the market, handling variations, incremental updates, and maintenance. And most importantly, the entire organization must conduct mandatory lessons learned.
And feed those insights, both positive and negative, back into the idea generation and prioritization phases.
You have to ensure the system itself undergoes continuous improvement.
That continuous feedback loop is what makes the whole system sustainable. It prevents the same mistakes from being repeated endlessly. And a final note on execution detail. The source material stresses that specific business units will have unique tools and storage requirements.
Right. So while the gate model structure is rigid and universal, the repository and the specific templates, the exact documents you generate at G2 or G5, are often tailored to the local organization to ensure they're applicable and useful.
So if we look back at the entire journey you just mapped out, it really represents the entire life cycle of a strategic business commitment.
It does. Governed by 4 core steps, moving from maximum creative freedom to maximum operational discipline.
Okay, let's recap them. Step 1, idea generation. Collect all ideas, external and internal, without prejudice, ensuring the funnel is full and you're actively fighting that internal bias for safety.
Then step 2, project prioritization. You rigorously filter those ideas first by that mandatory strategic alignment, EC, DIV, BU, PG. Second, by quantified customer input like the VOCI method. And third, by resource allocation, using the bucket list to force a balanced investment in short-term needs and those high-risk long-term platforms.
Next, step 3, road mapping. You take those approved, budgeted projects and you schedule them over the next 2 to 5 years, adjusting the timeline based on realistic resource constraints and the current financial needs of the business. You're balancing that short-term cash flow with your long-term competitiveness goals.
And finally, step 4, project execution. You deliver the product using a structured gate model, ensuring accountability and clear deliverables at every single transition point, with product management continuously monitoring the market reality and ensuring that business case remains viable throughout that long R&D development cycle from G2 to G5.
The ultimate takeaway here, it seems to me, is that these frameworks are not designed to stifle creativity. They're actually designed to guarantee that the right creative ideas receive the necessary focus and funding to survive the corporate inertia that would otherwise kill them.
That's a perfect summary. It ensures a continuous, balanced pipeline of innovation. It's a systematic structure that inherently forces that necessary balance between the immediate demand for cash and the absolute necessity of building the next generation of competitive products.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this entire methodology seems to be built on a single core tension: the necessity of taking risks.
Yes, if your system is working flawlessly, it should feel a little uncomfortable. You should have projects in your portfolio that might fail, but which offer massive returns if they succeed.
And this raises a really important question for you, the listener, to mull over.
It does. If you analyze your own investment distribution right now, is your current organizational structure set up to genuinely prioritize calculated risk and disruptive innovation? Or is the inherent corporate inertia, that human tendency towards safety, unconsciously funneling all of your resources toward safe, incremental product maintenance that will ultimately slowly erode your market position?
Think about those buckets. Are you strategically budgeting for the future, or are you just maintaining the past? Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into product portfolio management.
If you need to implement these frameworks, don't forget that detailed templates and further resources often exist within specialized management consulting libraries and hopefully your own internal documentation repositories.
Thank you for diving deep with us.
We'll see you next time.